What's going on, guys? It's been a while, but I'm back with an informational video. It's probably been like a long time, like 3 or 4 months, but I'm excited to be back. I feel like I'm letting you guys down a little bit. Constantly requested video is book recommendations for getting started learning about nutrition and stuff. So in this video, I'm going to share 5 top book recommendations. Basically, if you read these 5, you'll have a really good, solid foundation. And then I'm also going to go over 4 or 5 that are a little overrated that most like keto, paleo type people highly regard. Or maybe they're kind of mixed, but I don't think they're that great. As you can see, got a little bit of an experimental setup going here. So we'll see. I think we got a green screen. Maybe there's like different images appearing behind me. Could look good, could be kind of bad. You guys let me know down below. All right, I'm going to start in reverse order. 5 books that will give you a real solid foundation. I would say generally in nutrition, but some people would probably say this is kind of biased towards my nutritional beliefs, which are the fact that you want to have nutrient-dense animal foods as the foundation of your diet, just sort of like a paleo, keto, ancestral eating approach. So if you're looking for like, you know, like a vegan handbook, probably not going to be in this list. Okay, clocking in at number 5, probably one of the first people that sort of got me going down this path is Gary Taubes. He has a bunch of books, similar category. So probably, I would say his best, but maybe his most dense book is Good Calories, Bad Calories. The Case Against Sugar, I believe, is his most popular book. All of his books, they kind of blend together in my mind, most of them, but they give you a real solid foundation on where we went wrong just nutritionally in America. As far as like the institutional recommendations go, cholesterol's bad for you, saturated fat's bad for you, all of that stuff. And then he gives you a solution and sort of some evidence to the contrary on why maybe sugar is what's bad for you, processed foods, vegetable oils. He's not actually super anti-vegetable oil. He's mainly just a no sugar, no carb guy. Yeah, really, really good books, solid foundation to get you started, I would say. So any Gary Taubes book, I would say probably first one to pick up, The Case Against Sugar, just because it's a more easy read and covers a lot of the same point. Next up, we have a book that probably none of you have heard of, but I just read it last year and man, it really like changed my perspective on a lot of things. Gave a lot of like additional insights into just how you're supposed to eat. So this is The Fat of the Land by John Seymour. And I'll link all these books down below in the description. But there is a book that's really popular in the low-carb keto, mainly the carnivore community, called The Fat of the Land. That's a different book. That's by Wilhelmer Stephenson, which I also read, which I don't really love. But this one is about a guy, he's a pretty prolific writer. This is the only book of his I've read. In the 1950s, apparently, he just bought 5 acres of land in England and lived off of it. It gives you like firsthand detailed account. There's like expenses, like this is how much I bought carrot seeds for, that type of a thing. Very, very detailed, but it gives you a perspective of living off the land, what it takes, and just puts you more in a mindset of like how humans naturally eat. Yeah, so no refrigeration. So like you're learning how to eat with the cycles, fermentation, making your harvest last through the winter, just all these different complexities that modern humans don't really think about. We just put stuff in the freezer. We go to the grocery stores in January and buy fresh blueberries. Stuff that doesn't really make sense. This gives you more of a perspective on, yeah, how to make it living off the land. I think his whole thing was like, if you divide the population of England by the land mass, everyone gets like 5 acres. So that's why he lived off 5 acres. No cash, barter system, barter with your neighbors, like really just primitive stuff, but it's a pretty cool and interesting read. So this book, no, is not on the list, but Rob Wolf is a pretty well-respected author. He also has a podcast and stuff you can listen to, just really one of like the greats in the community, I would say. I've never met him, but I was like in the same room as him once when he was speaking, I think. This one I haven't fully read. I've kind of skimmed through it. This is his most recent book, Sacred Cow, The Case for Better Meat, more on like regenerative farming, sustainable farming practices. I would say my favorite book of his is called Wired to Eat, which came out maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I listened to it on audiobook. It was really good. Rob is not as into keto. He's more into paleo and figuring out what carbs work for you. His original like seminal work is The Paleo Solution. I think that was like early 2000s, maybe 2010 or something. That's a really good one too. He's just a really good writer, has a good perspective. He's not super dogmatic about stuff. I think his books are a really good place to start, maybe even before Gary Taubes, just because it's easier to read it's more practical as opposed to like going through more sciencey stuff and like different government organizations, how they made decisions in the past. Just kind of basic, like this is what you should eat, this is why type of stuff. So I really like Rob Wolf. Next up, we have the Bible of Nutrition, Nutrition and Physical Degeneration by Weston A. Price. I mean, if you're serious about nutrition, it's mandatory, in my opinion. All of the principles and the echoes of this book you find in modern day, like popular trendy diets like paleo, keto, all ancestral eating. A lot of it stems from this book written in the 1920s or 1930s. The quick premise of it is Weston A. Price was a dentist, and he wanted to figure out why in first world wealthy countries we have worse teeth than third world primitive civilizations. So that was like his original premise. He's like, I want to figure this out. We have fluoride, we have, dentists, we have toothpaste. What's happening here? Quickly, he realized it was the diet. He goes, I think there's 7 or 8 different case studies where he goes to 2 groups of people with the same stock is like the word he uses, which is like racial stock. So like he would go to Switzerland and he would take one group of people that lives by a port where they get imported Western goods, and then one people living like in the hills where they're kind of isolated. Same racial stock. The only difference is the diet. And he pretty quickly ties the negative dental results to the diet. It's not that hard for him to figure out. Over time, he also adds in several like additional insights and conclusions, which is what is a proper human diet. And then an additional conclusion he comes to is that you really want to emphasize fat-soluble vitamins, which is still sort of a mystery to a lot of people and not really talked about much, which is nutrient-dense animal foods are the greatest source of fat-soluble vitamins in our diets. And a lot of trendy modern diets de-emphasize animal food, which he would, I believe, say is a problem. So yeah, this one is just really a must-have. And then lastly, we have what I'm gonna put at number 1, just because it's a lot of the same concepts as Nutrition and Physical Degeneration, but it's just a lot easier to read, simplified, more enjoyable. This is the one that is better. It's a little bit more dense. It's Primal Body, Primal Mind by Nora Gedgaudas. And then there's this one, Primal Fat Burner. This is just like the real commercial version, where it's easy to read, hits all the major points, same author. This one came out more recently, but this one's a lot better. Basically all the same line of thinking as Weston A. Price. She has some additional insights and just more how to approach those concepts in the modern age. If I was gonna recommend to someone one book, like what do you need to read to get started, get a firm foundation? Because a lot of success with any diet is conviction. It's hard if you're like kind of questioning, like, is this really the right thing? Maybe Weight Watchers is the way to go. Maybe vegan diet's the way to go. So you have to develop some conviction. And even when you're slipping up on your diet a little bit, which I know some people have trouble with just sticking to things, rereading books like this that stress the importance and just give you more of like conviction in your thoughts and why it's important. This is the top pick, my number 1 nutrition book. And then if you guys didn't know, we do have 2 cookbooks that you can purchase. You can get these on Amazon. You can get them sometimes at the bookstore. Keto Made Easy, the Fat Adapted 50-Day Guide. This is like a guidebook and a meal plan type of book. And then this one is just a pure cookbook. This is our first cookbook. This one's a lot more popular. You can pick these up on Amazon. And then also I'll link down below, we do have some ebooks you can download, some cookbooks. There's 4 of them. Those are really good. That's probably your best bet if you just want something now to like get going, cooking stuff. So I will link those down below. Now, the 5 books that I think are overrated. This might be a little controversial because a lot of these books, I don't have all of them here, are beloved by many. But this is just my perspective on things. Some of these books, when I first read them, I was like, oh my goodness, this is revolutionary. This is what I'm gonna base the rest of my life on. This first one in particular, actually. The Obesity Code by Dr. Jason Fung. Really good guy. I've never spoken to him personally, but I have spoken to his right-hand woman. Megan Ramos is her name. She was on the podcast. She was really good. But yeah, so the concepts basically presented in this book is that this is like the most, I guess, intensely debated topic in nutrition these days, mostly. I guess with the rise of the keto diet. It's the like calorie model of weight loss versus the hormone model. So this is 100% hormone. So is Gary Taubes. Basically, they'll tell you weight loss is 100% dictated by hormones. And the best way to address that is by not eating any carbs or eating very low carbs. and fasting a lot. So this is all about fasting being the key to health and weight loss. I am like pretty much of the opinion that there's almost no magical or like really great properties to fasting, especially intermittent fasting, like 16, 18-hour daily fasts. There's some, I would say there's definitely some like marginal benefit possibly, but there's no real evidence that there's like tons of benefits in isolation, but there are knock-on effects that could be beneficial. So if most people, they wake up, they eat at 8 a.m. or whatever, and they stop eating at 8 p.m. before they go to bed, 10 p.m. So their eating window's really big. They're likely to get a lot more calories in that time. So when you're actively fasting and you're making an effort to fast 16 hours a day or whatever, you're just condensing your eating window, so you're probably eating less calories. So that's a big part of the benefits of fasting, which is not attributable to fasting in my mind. That's just attributable to eating less calories. But there is definitely some benefits to long fasting. I just don't think you're really tapping into a lot of those from like the evidence I've seen in 16 hours a day. Not to say that it's not a good idea, especially if you're getting good results from it. I would just say this book overstates a lot of things. The impact hormones have, the impact fasting has. I think the truth is somewhere in the middle. So I'm slightly negative on this book. Next up, I do have this book. I just didn't bring it with me today. The Plant Paradox by Dr. Gundry. This has to be like top 5, probably all-time selling nutrition books. The basic premise is lectins are the worst thing you can eat. Don't eat lectins. Gluten is a form of lectin. Basically, he goes through in the book all the different forms of lectins, goes into the downsides of certain plants. You can kind of infer that from the title. There is a paradox eating plants. Some of them are good for you. They have good nutrients. Some of them are bad for you. They have bad components that are fighting against your body, which I agree with that general premise. And I think a lot of what he says in the book is pretty good. Just the conclusions and like diet recommendations he gives are really terrible. And he never really justifies a lot of his dietary conclusions. So like you could read the book, you're getting a lot of good info, and he's building up this rapport with you where it's like, oh yeah, this guy knows his stuff. All of this sounds right, and a lot of it is right. And then he just jumps into recommending like 35 grams of protein a day, basically a vegan diet, really bad dietary recommendation. And he doesn't really justify the 35 grams of protein recommendation. Like he doesn't justify low protein diets in there anywhere. He just kind of builds up trust with you and then hits you with the, oh yeah, I'm actually like a big vegan guy. But he does justify his claims very thoroughly on why you shouldn't eat or you should reduce lectin consumption, which I think is a good idea. But yeah, that's one I would say is not a great nutrition book. Another one is going to be Dave Asprey books. I'm a little bit mixed on him. He gets a lot of hate lately. Like back 15 years ago, everyone loved him. This kind of happens with everyone, man. Like when you do something great, like Bulletproof, all that stuff really helped a ton of people, like made them significantly more healthy. Over time, just people start to hate you. I don't know what it is. I feel like it's happening with Elon Musk now. Like, seems like a good guy to me. I don't know. But it seems to happen with everyone. As you just burn a little too brightly, you start to fade. But overall, Dave Asprey books, I would say I kind of see the hate because it is really just a marketing machine, right? Like his books are selling you something. His diet plans are selling you something. So it's hard for me to trust him because I know the sort of formula he's running is like, what can I sell people? So if I recommend like a 40 gram a day collagen fast, you got to buy my collagen, that type of a thing, right? So, which he has done in the past. In general, I think his books are pretty good if you just take them for more of like the face value nutrition recommendations. He has some good lifestyle recommendations too, but you don't necessarily have to buy like his $200 blue blocker glasses because the technology is the same as the $7 ones on Amazon. So just stuff like that you have to be aware of. Overall, I mean, he's a pretty positive force in general, I would say, but definitely his earlier works are a lot better than his more modern marketing machine just trying to become a billionaire, which I think he's probably close at this point. And then the last one, I don't know, this might be even before a lot of you guys' time. The Primal Blueprint, the original Mark Sisson, I think it's his original book. I would say it's a little overrated, but for the time, so like it doesn't stand the test of time as much. Like I wouldn't recommend people these days, like go pick up the Primal Blueprint necessarily. For its time, pretty groundbreaking, probably was maybe one of the first stones that set in motion, like a lot of people understanding ancestral eating is the way to go. So for that reason, it's a really good book. I guess I wouldn't even really have it in this overrated list. I would just say there's probably better books now that cover a lot of the similar topics. It's really written in like a simplistic way where I could give it to my mom and she would kind of understand the premise of it. But yeah, just not really cracking the list of top books. I guess I wouldn't even have it on the overrated list. The other three are on the overrated list. This one's okay. It's just in the middle ground somewhere. And then another set of books that are just kind of in the middle ground, I would say, but maybe you guys should be aware of is Weston A. Price Foundation books. Sally Fallon, she is the head of the Weston A. Price Foundation. They all look the same. They're the Nourishing Traditions books. These are really practical. Just basically gives you guidance in every aspect of life. So like the one that I always recommend is the childcare one, which I don't have here right now. That is a good one. If I would get it as soon as you're like looking to try and get pregnant, because there are some things you maybe want to consider when you're in that process all the way up until your kid's like 10 years old. So that's a really good book. Just one that you should be aware of. It doesn't make the list, but it's just in the middle ground there. So that's going to do it, guys. That's the list. This was a long one. This series is supposed to be 5 in 5 minutes, which it looks like it's been 20 minutes plus. But the next one, which I'm going to do a series of these, is going to be 5 minutes. So thanks for watching, guys. Comment down below if you have any suggestions or additions that you would make to this list. Maybe I'm missing something. Let me know if I'm missing something down below. Thanks for watching.